So thank you all for joining us for this virtual tour to the Maldives, a place that I have always wanted to go and hope to visit someday. Brad Climpson and Mike Murphy are going to be taking us on a tour. They've both been to the Maldives multiple times. Brad has put together a wonderful presentation of his own images and video, so you can really see firsthand what there is above and below the waves in the magical Maldives. Of course, many of you have traveled with both Brad and Mike, so also known as Murph. So you know that they're both great dive masters, they're great photographers. Brad is also a marine biologist, so he really knows what he's talking about, and I think you guys are all going to come away from this with a little more knowledge on the underwater wonders there. They've both been working on expedition cruise ships for pretty much decades at this point, have been around the world. I won't speak for them, but it kind of sounds like the Maldives has a special place in both of their hearts. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to them to tell you and show you all about this amazing destination. So take it away, Brad and Murph.
Alrighty. Well, firstly, well, good morning from me, probably good afternoon or good evening to a lot of you, depending where you are. So hope you're all good. Great to see some wonderful faces again, and hope to see you again shortly. So I can't see all of you while I'm doing this because I have the slides in front of me. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question at any time if you have one, or you can save them till the end, whatever you like. But yeah, if you want to make it a bit more interactive, that's fine. Want to say anything, Murph? Murph? All right, well, we'll just crack on then, shall we? All right, so a bit different today. I never lectured in front of a computer before. Normally I'm in the comforts of my home, so I'm happy. Probably don't even need to be wearing pants, but anyway, that's another thing. Here we go. Dive into the Maldives with Brad Climpson and Mike Murphy. Look at those two good-looking young roosters there. So we're the guys that are going to be taking you for this wonderful journey through the Maldives, if you choose to come with us, which you should. It's a great place. This is an aerial shot of some of the Maldives last time we were there. We took the plane over and we took this shot from the air. So the Maldives is basically just a big system of atolls. So to bring that in, to sort of show you a little bit more, obviously, it's about 400 miles southwest of Sri Lanka, and the area here, from north to south, the Maldives is about 510 miles or 820 kilometers in length, and it's basically running along a ridge called the Chagos-Laccadive Ridge. And to the north, we have Lakshadweep, which is a system of islands further up owned by India, and to the south, you may have heard of the Chagos group of islands, and they're further south from the Maldives. But this chain here formed about 85 to 65 million years ago. There was a lot of movement here in the sea ridge, a lot of mountain building, and basically volcanoes were created and pushed away from a hotspot. As the volcanoes started to die, they started to recede into the sea, and they were taken over by coral growth. But we'll talk about that very shortly. So this is the area of the Maldives that we're going to be visiting, just in that central region, because it's around the area where Malé, the capital, and the island with the airport, that's where we'll be departing from. And it's a great little section of the Maldives to visit. There's plenty of atolls very close together. So I'll give you a little idea here. If you look at where it's the red dot with Malé there, we'll depart from there, and it doesn't really matter. There's no rhythm or rhyme to which way we travel through these atolls, but most likely we'll head up to North Ari, down to south, across to Barbu, down to Mimu and Ta, and probably back up through Vataru. There's actually another couple of atolls a little bit further south of Ta Atoll, down the bottom there, Lamu being one, which is quite nice. If we're feeling adventurous, we can head down to Lamu as well. But there's plenty to see up here. South Ari is where we go to see the whale sharks. We'll talk a bit more about that a little later in the presentation, but that just gives you a little idea. That's that little condensed area in the middle of that previous map. And this is the area we'll concentrate on. And the beautiful thing is everything's quite close to each other. So we can spend a bit more time there. We can spend a little less time there. We can do whatever we want, really. So it makes for a very fun trip. Alrighty, so the boat we're going on next year is a boat called the Empress Serenity. Beautiful little boat. It's only going to be a small group on board, but between 2024 plus Murph and I, and it'll be a great little way to head through the Maldives. Now, that's just the mothership. They actually give us some tenders that we use, and also a thing called a Doni, which is an 18-meter vessel, and it's basically set up for diving and snorkeling. The divers will probably use that, and the snorkelers will use the other tenders, but the dive operation is completely separate. We all live on the boat, do our thing there, and everything else runs separate. So it's a great little setup. And for me, the best way to see the Maldives is to do it via boat. You can go and stay in the hotels on the islands, but on the islands, you're kind of trapped on that island. You can snorkel offshore there. You might be able to hire a boat to go somewhere else. But if you do the Maldives on a boat, you can actually see a lot more of the Maldives themselves. It's a fantastic way of sort of spreading your wings when you're heading out to that area of the world, because it is certainly a spectacular area of the world to be in. All right, so when we get together on our little boat, we'll have a group photo before we head out. So you can see it's a nice little intimate group. We all get to know each other very well, and this is in Malé itself, getting ready to depart to head out for our travels. Alrighty, and just to give you an idea, this is Radiga Island, and Radiga is on South Ari Atoll. We'll probably stop there for a little bit of a visit one day, but I'll go through a few more of the islands shortly. As usual with a Seagram trip, we encompass a large array of things. We're not just going there for diving, we're not just going there for snorkeling, we're going there for the culture, we're going there to visit islands, we're going there to relax, we're going there to learn about the area. So to begin with this morning, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the Maldives Formation, a little bit about the corals that we can expect to see, some of the inhabitants, and then we'll move on to a few other things that we're going to see. All right, so basically, here's just a nice aerial view of an atoll. An atoll used to be a large volcano that has come up from the seabed, grown up out of the water, been active, moved away from its hotspot, so it's not active anymore. Started to cool down, die out, they crumble from the top. They also start to fall apart from the bottom, so they actually fall down into the ocean. So if you have a look at this respect, on this, so the volcano forms. As it cools, it actually then becomes a place where coral can start to grow. So these coral have released eggs and sperm into the water. They have fused, they've become a planular larvae, and now they're just free floating through the water, looking for a nice spot to hold on to. They come across this massive, big, round volcano, so they start to grow on the sides of that. They need to be in the water predominantly, so they will start to grow underneath the tide level. As the volcano starts to crumble down and recede, the coral will actually grow up towards the light, because the coral on the sides is moving further and further down. It doesn't want to get too deep, because if it's out of the light, it won't be able to survive. So it starts to grow up, 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 and eventually, once that volcano has disappeared, you're just left with the rim. And in some of these atolls, there's about 100 meters of coral growth on top of what used to actually be the volcanic rim. So it's very impressive the way that these corals have grown up and created these amazing areas. And you can see a little label on the far right there saying lagoon. So when the volcanoes crumble, they also crumble down into themselves, which allows for a shallow area. The coral can start to grow there. Coral starts to die, gets broken up into sand, and it starts to fill up the center of that area. And we end up getting sand Cay Islands, which then can become vegetated, and they're the ones that we go and visit. So it's a beautiful little way that nature creates its own habitat. And I just love these areas. All right, so Corals themselves. We get two types of coral, or two main types of coral, hard and soft corals. Now, this is a great example of the Porites hard coral. These are very slow growing. So these are the leviathans of the reef. Very important. They don't look as pretty and amazing as a lot of other corals, but to me, these are the best corals on the reef because they're the formation of it. They're the basis. Other things can grow in them and on them when they die. Fantastic things. They grow about 1 to 3 centimeters in a year. So very slow growing, but very, very long lived. Now, I just wanted to show you, this is a little tour of a Porites boulder here. Look at the size of this one. So if they grow up 1 to 3 centimeters in a year, have a look at this one. This one is well over 1,000 years old. So imagine the things that this Porites has seen during its lifetime. When I was doing this swim around, I couldn't even get around to the other side because it was too, it would have been too long a video. But I'm sort of about halfway around now. So just amazing to see these leviathans of the reef growing up. And as you can see, when this sort of stops here, you can see a little bit of soft coral growing in the purple Porites there. You can see a few other varieties of hard coral there. We've got a few different species of favid coral as well. But so they're making that basis. They're growing up. They're building a template for all of the other reef animals and species to live on or live around. Very, very important corals. Just to quickly go back over how the corals formed, I mentioned that we had these corals will release egg and sperm bundles into the water. They're DNA coded, so when they bounce into each other, if they've got the wrong DNA code, they don't fuse. If they got the correct one, they fuse, they become a planular larva, and then they move along in the water. When they're ready to settle, they'll come down. They have a special stinging cell called an agglutinate nematocyst, and they use this to stick themselves to something hard. Now, this something hard has to be dead. It has to be a rock. It has to be a dead coral, a log, something that's just down there and is not moving. Once they do that, while they've been in the plankton, they've been being bombarded in their fleshy area by a microscopic algae called zooxanthellae. Now, that microscopic algae is the most important thing for a hard coral. It's how they get over 90% of their food. They photosynthesize in a similar way to land plants photosynthesize. So once they have attached, so if you have a look at this coral here, this is actually a honeycomb coral. They're the best ones to give you an example of what polyps look like. So pick any one of these round polyps and just concentrate on any one of those round polyps. Just imagine that's the very first one. So that was the one that colonized. So that one's colonized, it's got itself attached, it's starting to photosynthesize, it's creating the sugars and starches out of the water, it's creating minerals from what the polyp is feeding on, and it's making a calcium carbonate skeleton. Once it starts to grow...
Sorry, Brad, I just don't get it. Which one did you say it started with? Is that the little one in the corner? I'm not sure.
It's the one in the top right. You can barely see it.
Oh, okay, I see it now. Sorry, mate, carry on.
So anyway, so that one will then, nice one. That one will then asexually divide or bud into two. 2 will become 4, 4 will become 8, and so on and so on. So if you imagine Bob in the middle there was the first one, he splits into 2. Hi, Bob. Hi, Bob. They split into 4, hi Bob, hi Bob, hi Bob, hi Bob, and then away they go, and they make a huge colony. And that, if you remember back to that Porites I was swimming past, is how that one formed. Every single polyp on that massive Porites is genetically identical to the next. It's quite an incredible thing. So that's your hard corals. So we'll just quickly have a look at the anatomy of them. This is the living part. This is the polyp. So the polyp, a good way to think of a polyp, they're actually in the family Cnidaria, which is the jellyfish family. And so if you think of a jellyfish that's upside down with its tentacles up and it's stuck to a rock, that's kind of a good way of thinking of a coral polyp. Obviously, it's a bit more advanced than that, but you can see these tentacles that the polyps have. In the end, they're covered in nematocysts or stinging cells. They're basically like a little harpoon that they spear. And they'll feed on microscopic plankton. That's what they feed on when they're feeding. You can see The close-up there, it's showing zooxanthellae in the cells of that particular coral. The zooxanthellae, again, is that microscopic algae that they're using to photosynthesize. Now, zooxanthellae is actually a thing called a dinoflagellate. If you've ever been around on the water when there's been bioluminescence in the water, and you've seen that glow in the water, that is created much like the back of Murph's screen right now, that bioluminescence in the background there. So you see that beautiful green color. That's a thing called bioluminescence created by free-living dinoflagellates. So they live freely in the ocean. These type of dinoflagellates, the zooxanthellae, need a place to live. So they'll actually live in the tissues of these corals. All right, so that's how they sort of get about. And as I said, every single one of these is genetically identical. They're linked together. They're a colony. They're a family. They all help each other out. So a quick, just to show you the skeleton part as well that they've been building. So they build this amazing home, this white skeleton here, this calcium carbonate. It's only the top layers of the coral that you see that is actually alive. Everything underneath is that dead skeleton that they have been creating. And you can see there's connective tissue between the polyps. So if one half of the coral is doing well, it can share its nutrients with the other half, and they can help to keep each other alive. So they're a wonderful system. And you know, coral reefs make up 1/4 of the world's biodiversity. And, you know, I mean, coral reefs are one of the greatest things that you'll ever get to see. Few examples of how they form, because they have different growth forms. Different growth forms, I often refer to coral reefs as rainforests of the sea, because they have similar properties to rainforests. Coral reefs are found in tropical areas, like a lot of the tropical rainforests. They are in nutrient depleted areas. There's not a lot of nutrients in the water, and luckily for coral reefs being there, they create all the nutrients that allow for so much biodiversity to be on the reef. But they need different growth strategies, just like a rainforest, to try and outcompete each other. One of these is to form in these big plate or table-like formations. And these are in the Acropora family, this group. They'll grow up in this big sort of flat solar panel type area, trying to capture as much sunlight as possible so they can photosynthesize, so they can create and build that skeleton and grow nice and big. And then they spread out and they shade the corals beneath them, and then they can take over the area. So that's a great little strategy for the corals. Now, because you're growing quickly and out like that in a thin area, it does make you susceptible to breaking. So there's pros and cons to every adaptation. Branching corals, they're also in the Acropora family. So they're in the same genus as these guys here, but they have a different strategy. They will grow in long branches. These grow very quickly, up to over 20 centimeters per year. So they're growing up much like a tree in a rainforest, towards the light, towards the light, towards the light, trying to take over an area as quickly as possible. But again, they are susceptible to breaking because they're long, thin stems on these branches here. And just to show you, there's lots of different colors that we get with these corals, beautiful colors like this. Some of the color comes from protein within the living tissue, but a lot of the color actually comes from that zooxanthellae, that algae that's inside the coral, or inside the polyp, I should say. And it makes sense that when you look at a reef, when you go looking at a reef, and on a video that you might see, you'll see often these multicolored, hugely bright coral reefs. But when you're actually in the real world and swimming around on a coral reef, you will find, if you notice, most corals are green, brown, or yellow. Reason being that color allows them to absorb the sunlight more effectively. If you imagine the water being a prism, the sunlight being the white light hits the prism and it breaks up into its spectra of colors. The largest bands are green, brown, and yellow. So that makes more sense to be these colors, so they can effectively absorb that sunlight and help to grow. Alrighty, so the other type of coral, so that's hard coral. So with hard corals, they build the reef. They create the structure that everything surrounds. Then we need to get some decorators in. Once the house is built, we need to decorate the house. So we get soft corals. Soft corals, this is just a little look at the anatomy here. they, as the name suggests, don't have that hard skeleton. They have these little things called sclerites, which are those little sort of three-prong things in the coenchyme there. They give it some rigidity, but when they break down, they actually break down into nothing. When a hard coral dies, it leaves its skeleton behind. It leaves a building block. When a soft coral dies, it doesn't leave anything behind for anything to grow on. So it's basically just a reef decorator. Now they, in some cases, they'll have some of that zooxanthellae, but not as much as the hard coral. So they need to feed with their polyps. So they're predominantly feeding with their polyps, whereas the hard corals are predominantly feeding by the sun. All right, so another thing to tell the difference between hard and soft corals is the number of tentacles on their polyps. In a soft coral, they have 8 tentacles. In a hard coral, they have 6 tentacles. All right, so when you're down there, count the tentacles and you'll know what you're looking at. But just to show you quickly, I want to show you some strategy when these corals are feeding. Now, I'm going to show you 2 little videos of soft corals feeding. It's exactly the same when hard corals feed. It's just easier to get footage of soft corals feeding because they feed more often. So this is 2 species of Xenia coral, the genus Xenia coming up, this first one. See how the current is pushing and pushing and pushing. What it's doing is bringing lots of nutrients in. So even though they seem like they're getting rushed around by this current, it's good for the coral because there's lots more water, there's lots more nutrients being delivered to them. So they can actually, what we would call that passive feeding, sitting around and just letting the food come to them. But quite often when there's no movement on the reef at all, it's hard to get new water towards you. So the corals have a wonderful little system here, and this is what they do. If you look, they're curling. What they're actually doing is causing a vortex and sucking water into that colony. So you can imagine all of those corals working in unison as one. They're just pumping their own water over the coral and creating a way to actually capture food. And if you look closely, you can actually count the 8 tentacles on those polyps. So we know we're looking at a soft coral there. Excuse me. So we've got the hard corals building the reef. We've got the soft corals coming along and helping to decorate the reef. Now we get inhabitants moving in. You know, when you've got a beautiful house, somebody wants to live there. So a couple of the things, I'll show these ones first because they have a similarity with the hard corals. If you look at the beautiful coloration in these giant clams, again, a little bit of that is protein coloration, but a lot of it is actually that zooxanthellae. So that microscopic algae invades the tissues, the mantle of these clams, much like it does the hard corals, and they get predominantly most of their food from the sun as well, so through photosynthesis. Now, a little thing about that zooxanthellae, so you can tell all your friends, I said it was a thing called a dinoflagellate. Because it lives in the tissues of these animals, it's called an endosymbiotic dinoflagellate. So remember that, write it down, use it next time you're having drinks with your friends. I'm sure they'll think you're very windswept and interesting. But it's a wonderful thing. All it means is it lives inside the tissues of this animal. It's symbiotic. It's getting a home. So it's getting something from that animal, but it's also providing it food. So there's a symbiotic relationship that's going on. Beautiful animals, lots of different colorations, lots of different patterns, and one of the most amazing things. So pretty much, I'll tell you which ones aren't, but pretty much everything I've taken was taken in the Maldives when Murph and I were there last time. So all of this stuff. What's that?
And they come in so many different sizes too. I mean, we've seen down there over 5 feet in length, the giant clams.
Oh, absolutely.
Amazing. To the little, 1-inch burrowing clams, every color under the sun. They're just an amazing creature. Phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point. So these ones are a smaller species of Tridacna called the burrowing clam. So they'll get up to about 23 centimeters. What's that, about 8 inches, 9 inches, something like that?
Yeah.
And the big ones, yeah, will get over, the big giant clams will get over 5 feet. So yeah, well pointed out. And they're just stunning to look at. All right, so other inhabitants that come along, we have different types of sea star that we'll see. On the left there, you will see a pincushion sea star, and you can see why it gets that name. It looks like one of the pincushions with all the pins stuck into it. These guys will travel across the reef. They'll be feeding on maybe some little invertebrates, maybe some gastropod snails, things like that. They will actually encase them and feed on them. The little orange sea star on the right there, it will actually move across the reef and it will feed on algae that's growing on the dead portions of the reef. So they do different things, all of the sea stars, but they're all in a group called the echinoderms, which means spiny skin. And there's a very large array of the animals that are found in this group called the echinoderms, and the sea stars are just one of them. Fantastic. But just to give you an example, the orange sea star on the right, the reason why we quite often use scientific names, that one's Echinasta luzonicus, is because that guy, beautiful bright and orange as it is there with 5 arms, you can actually see these that are a dull brown with 6 arms, but it's exactly the same species of sea star, genetically identical. So it's quite incredible to see the differences, the way these things grow. Another type, very ancient sea star, one of the oldest types of sea stars that we get are the feather stars or the crinoids. And these are different. They actually filter feed. So they have a system of little legs called cirri that they use to hang on to the reef. They'll find a nice little part of the reef where there's an extremity. They will have their arms out in the water, as you can see. They've got tiny little hair-like projections on the arms called pinnules. They capture plankton and nutrients out of the water. It then gets transported down that arm all the way to the central mouth, which is in the middle. And they're just beautiful to see. Again, a variation of colors on these. Sometimes they're hiding in the reef if the weather's too rough, but when it's nice and there's a bit of gentle current, they'll come out, they'll unfurl those arms, and they're just a beautiful thing to see.
And when they free swim too, Brad, when you see them free swimming, they're amazing.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Murph.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, because this is a great way that, like the sea stars, the other sea stars have tube feet to crawl around with. These guys don't have tube feet, so they have to use their arms. This is in the Maldives, same with this. And then if they want to get somewhere else, they can swim like this. So they just sort of parachute off the side of the reef, use those arms to try and break their fall. And when they land somewhere else, they'll grab on with those little cirri, and then hopefully they've landed in a nutrient-rich area. So this is the thing about when you're snorkeling or diving, you just take your time. I didn't manufacture any of this stuff, okay? I don't manufacture, I just watch and observe. I don't make things do things they're not meant to be doing. So all of that was just, I just happened to be swimming past at the time and observing. And that's a good rule for snorkeling or diving. Take your time and observe. We're not there to break records to make a long grant. We're not trying to break the 100-meter record. So it's a good way to do it. Go slow, observe. All right, so this is also, funnily enough, in the same family, the echinoderms, the spiny skins. This is a sea cucumber. This is a gray sea cucumber. We'll find these on top of the reef. See those little mouth pads there? It's picking up all of the sand and fine particulate matter into the mouth, through the system. At the back, you can see that little system, looks like a little pearl necklace coming out. That's actually sea cucumber poo. You can see it floating down to the reef. So what the sea cucumbers are doing, the ones on the reef, are picking up all the fine particulate matter, the sand, they're cleaning it all, and then they're releasing it back so it's nice and clean. They're like a vacuum cleaner, if you like. There's many different species. Some you'll find on the white sandy bottom, some you'll find on the reef top itself, but they're very, very important. And again, even though they don't look anything like sea stars or the feather stars, they're all in the same group, those echinoderms. Amazing creatures. All right, so we'll get out of the echinoderms and quickly into a type of worm. I'll just show you this one because this one's super cool. This is the Christmas tree worm. Now, when we're talking about worms on coral reefs, we have worms that are called polychaete worms, poly, many, chaete, little sort of hair-like projections, many chaetae on their bodies. So there's many different species. Some live in the sand, some in the reef, some actually hide in the reef and project sort of feeding apparatus out from the reef itself. But these Christmas tree worms, they bore into this big Porites boulder coral in this case. They use an enzyme to secrete the calcium carbonate. then they create their own little skeleton that they live in. So this beautiful blue you can see and a little bit of white and brown, that's part of the worm. But imagine underneath that a long thin worm, much like any other worm you would see. That end bit you can see there is actually a modified head. So the head of a worm is a thing called the protosomal cell. And in this case, it's being transformed into this big feathery Christmas tree looking area. It uses this to A, breathe. So this is where it respires from. But B, it also feeds from this area as well. So again, they're filtering plankton out of the water, and that's how they feed. They're very light sensitive. They have tiny little things called the celli in them. So if a shadow comes over them, they'll go in. They're very sensitive to movement. So if they feel the water rushing suddenly, they'll also pull in. So I'll give you a quick example. I have doctored this one obviously, but look at that. So, and just slow it down a little bit. As I come in, it sees my finger and boom, in they go, back into their little shell. But the good thing about that is that once they feel good again about things and they're pretty sure nothing's outside, they will slowly rise back up, as you can see, and back to feeding. So beautiful, beautiful animals. And literally you see these every time you go snorkeling or diving. So if you're with Murph diving, if you're with me snorkeling, we'll point these out if you haven't seen them before. That's why we're there. We're there to show you all these amazing animals that live on the reef. Isn't that right, Murph?
Absolutely. And one of the greatest things too with using these smaller ships, you know, virtually dive liveaboards, is that we had, the last time we had 4 dive masters plus extra guys that were doing the snorkeling. So for the divers specifically, we would never have more than 3 divers without a guide. So it's so personalized, the diving there. It's wonderful to have that option of spreading out wherever we want to. We don't have to stick in a group. So we can go off with 2 or 1s, I mean, in pairs, and it's wonderful. And I just wanted to mention about the vessel we're using, Brad, the Serendipity, the Serenity. Yeah, that's one we have used before too. The Serenity, she was built in 2016. I went on to sea 2 years after it was built. It's about 36 meters long, but it has a draft of 13.5 meters. Okay, we're talking 40 feet draft. So she's huge, which makes the cabins big. So most liveaboards, you know, the cabins are pretty small on most liveaboards, but these cabins here are good sized cabins. The bathrooms are beautiful and huge. So it's a great vessel to go out in. And as Brad was saying a bit about the itinerary in the beginning, this is just a skeleton of the itinerary that we have. It doesn't mean that's what we're going to stick to. In fact, we go by the weather conditions, the sea conditions, all different reasons where and why we will dive. So we often start off to head somewhere and we find out that the current's too strong. So we'll go around the back side of the reef and find another spot. So it's very versatile. We can just go more or less anywhere we want. And we always find great places. Brad, you know that. It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a phenomenal trip because it's our boat. It feels like it's our own boat. And we do exactly what we want to do with it.
Yeah, and that's the good thing. That's a good point. You won't see the Maldives like this with anybody else. If you just jump onto a tour, they'll do A, B, C, D, E, F, and then go home. With us, and like Murph was saying, there's a multitude of reasons why we go to different places. And a big one is, we say to you, what do you guys want to do today? Do you want to go and hang out on a beach for a couple of hours, or do you want to go for a dive and a snorkel? So it's very, because it's a small group, it's a small vessel, it's very easy to plan the itinerary, and you guys are well and truly involved in it. So yeah, it's good. I enjoy it very much so.
And the other thing, you know, we're not following the rules of a dive liverboard where you're diving 3-4 times a day. Everyone's exhausted. I don't know about anyone else. I'm happy with 2 dives. I don't mind throwing in a night dive, a third, but most of us are happy with 2 dives. And there's so much else to do out there. Those islands, I would say, probably the most beautiful beaches in the world. The only other better beaches I've seen, or not better, but on par, are the Seychelles and some parts of the Bahamas. But the difference,
most
obviously,
of the Australian coastline.
yeah, the beaches are magnificent there, man. They really are. And we're not always diving. Someday, look at the times we just suddenly find a sand key, Brad. And we said, okay, all stop on the propellers. Let's go ashore. Take the bar with us, you know.
Sorry, I got a couple of slides coming up, and we'll just get through a bit more of this, things to expect in the water. And again, I'm not sure, to make sure that you've got a distinction here, it's not just diving, it's snorkeling as well, okay? And I come with you. Murph predominantly does the diving, and I predominantly do the snorkeling, okay? So you'll have a guide, one of us with each one, every single time. So you're not just thrown in the water and sent off. So I'll just get through a few more things that we're going to see in the water, because there's coming up a few really important ones. And then we'll show you a few slides of some of the places that we do stop, and just a few other things that we do on the trip as well. So of course, you know, they were invertebrates I was just showing you. We get lots of different species of fish. Sandy had that wonderful big background of lots of yellowfin surgeonfish. They're the ones in the top right there, yellowfin surgeon. In the front of the screen, it's a peacock grouper, and photo bombing right in the back there is a long-nosed butterfly fish. So it's a good little example, this one. The surgeonfish up in the top right is a grazer. It's grazing on algae there. The peacock grouper is actually an active predator, so it's feeding on smaller fish, invertebrates, things like that. And that long-nosed butterfly fish in the background there is picking up all of the nutrients that are stuck in the cracks and crevices of the reef as well. That's why it has that exceptionally long nose there. So lots of different types of fish, lots of different reasons why they're formed in a certain way. Another great type we'll see, I know that in the Americas these aren't very popular, but where I live and also in the Maldives, these are meant to be there. One of the most beautiful fish I think you'll ever see. I love them. This is a zebra lionfish, and they're in the scorpion fish family, the Scorpionidae. So you can think of scorpionfish or stonefish as well. They're in the same family. They have 13 spines down their back, so we don't touch these guys because the spines have a venom inside, and it's not very nice. But they're predatory fish. They sit down, they use those big feathery pectoral fins, the big side fins, the big dorsal fins, to basically mimic a soft coral or an algae on the reef. And when they're doing this, little fish just swim past unexpecting, and they'll launch out and they'll eat them. So it's a great little strategy on the reef. Absolutely beautiful. Anemone fish, so everybody loves to see Nemo and his cousins. These are orange fin anemone fish. There's many different species of anemone fish that we'll find here. This is just one of them. You can see that tentacled area is the sea anemone itself. It has stinging cells, nematocysts, just like the corals do. These nematocysts are used to sort of detract other fish from coming into the area. So the anemone fish who spend their lives swimming around there get coated in the mucus of the anemone. So the anemone doesn't discharge those nematocysts into them, but it will to another fish that comes into the area. But there's some bigger things that will go towards an anemone and try and eat it, things like hawksbill turtles. So these guys, even though they're small, pound for pound, they whack a pretty good punch, and they're not scared of anything. So they'll actually shoo all of these animals away that could actually potentially prey on that anemone. So again, they have a symbiotic relationship. The anemone allows for a home here. The fish protects and helps that particular anemone. So the other thing the fish does is they defecate in the area, which becomes nutrients for the anemone as well. And there's generally one large, although in this one at the front, there's 2 large fish here. These are both female. It's not common, but you do see 2 large females in a group. Normally there's one, and the female was originally a male when it was younger. It's grown up, it's become the female, now it's become the dominant member of that colony. What it does is it keeps the others, the smaller ones, in a permanent state of stress. This prevents them from growing. So she sort of chases them around all day and makes sure they're working. And this prevents them from growing, because if they grow, they'll eventually become female as well, and they'll become competition for her. But if she dies, then the next one in line will actually grow, become the female, and take over. So it's a good little system going on there. And there's many types of anemone fish that we will see. So here's a little video of it. Some black surgeonfish, yellowfin surgeonfish swimming around. Here's some of the orange fins in their anemone. The Maldives anemone fish. You've got to come here to see this fish. You don't come to the Maldives, you don't see the Maldives anemone fish. And then a beautiful lionfish. Just a little bonus at the end here. These are some garden eels. We'll see these when we're swimming along the sandy bottoms. They're a special little type of eel that's a plankton feeder. So they have a little hole in the sand. They come out and they just pick nutrients out of the water. And there's quite a few places in the Maldives we'll get to see these. They're a wonderful little addition to any snorkel or dive. I just wanted to show you this one quickly, because this is the Blaming's unicorn fish. Now, that beautiful bright blue color it has, this is taken in the Maldives. It was black about 3 seconds before that. So they can change color. Most fish on the reef can actually change color. And another good reason why, instead of swimming straight past everything and going, oh, that looks pretty, that looks great, that looks great, what's up there? Sit and just watch. Because I sat and watched, I actually got to watch this change color. Now, I didn't get great video of that, but I did get a different video that I will show you. There'll be two fish in this video. They're both black. Look at the one at the back of the picture and watch how it changes color. So the one in the back, that's starting to go dark blue and then right into a light blue coloration. So you'll see this in the Maldives, generally around where there's cleaning stations. The fish are communicating each other. They don't speak like us, so they make noises we can't hear, and they change different colors. A lot of the reef fish can actually change into colors that we can't see with the spectrum that our eyes can see. We don't have the ability to see that color change. So the reef fish are quite an amazing thing. And so that's a good segue into color changes. There are a lot of octopus in the Maldives. Now, this was a photo taken in the Maldives. This is a common reef octopus. They have things in their skin called chromatophores, and these chromatophores allow for them to change color. They have very advanced eyes, so they can see the different colors and shapes around them very quickly, and they can immediately change the color of the body to suit the area they're in, or they can flash to signal to say if they're stressed, or they're trying to show an aggression, or they're trying to find a mate. So they use this as a system of communication and also as a system of camouflage. They also have special cells in their skin that allows them to change the way the skin moves. So if they're on a particularly bumpy coral, they can make their skin bumpy. So not only are they turning the color of the coral, but they're taking the form of the coral as well. They're quite incredible to see. And that's the thing, when we're snorkeling or diving, all hands on deck to find things. Somebody spots one of these, they let everybody else know, and we come and have a look. And I'll just show you, this is a sped up version firstly. This is the octopus. This is in the Maldives at a place called Vanhura Valley. One of the places we'll definitely go. I love Vanhura Valley. And you can see it now, it's coming up. See that there's a little tube on the side there, that siphon. That's how they bring water in over their gills, but it's also a propulsion system. You can see he's using his tentacles to clean that out now. Must have got a bit of sand in. But look at the way it's changing color there, changing color, changing color. It's changed the formation of its skin to be bumpy, like that coral around it. It's getting ready. It doesn't know whether it should leave or not. So it's flashing a few times just to see, and then it'll change completely dark purple very shortly. And then whoosh, off it goes into the crack there. So I'll just slow that down for you a little so you can just see that wonderful color. Look at that color change, just so dramatic all over the entire body, and then changes into that dark purple, and away he goes to escape predation. Beautiful thing to see. And I mean, like, we saw them almost every day last time we were there. You've just got to be looking at and watch these animals do that. It's incredible.
We also
saw great footage of them mating as well.
Yeah, we saw them mating. That's, I mean, each time I've dove in the Maldives, I've come across mating pairs, and that's incredible to watch. It seems to be, during this time, I'm not sure if they mate year round, but talking to the dive guides that are working there year round, they reckon April, May, you're always going to find them. You know, I'm really surprised, because the first pair I ever found mating was in the Maldives. I've never seen them mating anywhere else outside of the Maldives. Obviously they are, but they're much more prolific in the Maldives, easier to find.
Yeah, and just a thing on the mating, so the males have a special arm called the hectocotylus, and what they do is they put that into the mantle cavity of the female, and they produce these sperm bundles. They fertilize the female's eggs, and then unfortunately for the males will go off and die. Then the female will wait till these eggs hatch and sort of keep them protected for about anywhere from 30 to 40 days, but she won't feed in that entire time. So generally by the time the young are ready to leave, the female dies as well. So it's a pretty expensive effort they put into reproduction, the octopus. So getting to see that is quite an amazing thing. So we'll see moray eels. I mean, I remember Murph a lot saying, man, if I see another moray, I'm going to pull my hair out. Because you see a lot of morays on this reef, and they're an amazing animal. They're cool. Yeah, they're such cool animals, and they're different to the other ones. They've got great smell, but not very good eyesight. So you've got to be careful around them. Just don't stick your fingers in front of them. They might mistake it for a moving fish or something. But because they've got such a narrow head, when they grab onto things, they can't form a good negative pressure to hang on to it. So what they have is a special adaptation called pharyngeal jaws. And I'm convinced this is where they got the idea for that movie Alien, where there's that big alien with that jaw that comes out of its mouth. That's what these guys have, but it doesn't come all the way out of their mouth. What it is, it's back in the pharynx here. And when they go to grab something, it actually shoots forward and grabs on with teeth that sort of face backwards. And it allows them to help to pull that fish down into the stomach of the eel, because they can't grab onto it properly with just the mouth. So, pretty cool animals. And that's one of the things that distinguish morays from other types of eels, is they have that set of pharyngeal jaws. All right, one of the big ones. This is one of the ones that everybody wants to see. And these are the manta rays. These manta rays are absolutely beautiful. They're filter feeders. We generally just see the reef manta rays here, so they'll get to about maybe the big ones between 19 and 21 feet from wingtip to wingtip. They use these big projections on the front of their head there, the cephalic lobes, to curl water into their mouths. Now you can see the gills open there. They have gill raker plates inside. Now, the interesting thing about the manta rays is they have these little lobes on their gill rakers. And if you imagine like a pinball machine that's sort of flicking the balls up into the screen, as the food goes in, instead of it getting clogged into the plates themselves, it actually tries to kick them straight down into the mouth. So it's a great way to try and keep the gills clean and not getting overclogged with small animals. This is a snorkeling shot that we took when we were snorkeling with mantas. This is from a dive. Sometimes you see these beautiful things in these, in beautiful formation. It's quite a great thing to watch when they're in the water. But just to show you some video, here's some stingrays as well. This is a fantail ray. We'll see these. This is porcupine rays at Bandura Valley in the Maldives as well. So they're moving across the bottom, trying to find things in the sand to eat. Beautiful to see. Eagle rays in the Maldives as well. This was on a snorkel, swimming past. They have that big shovel face to go down and take things out of the sand. Here's some manta rays. I found that mantas love bubbles when you're diving. It must tickle their belly or something. But this is all in the Maldives. Here's those ones that are just sort of coming along in formation. And this is the snorkel one. Have a look at that, just cruising along and taking all that water and getting all that plankton out. Absolutely beautiful. So just a great sight to see. And we see mantas a lot because the guys know where they're going to be at what time of year. So if we want to have a manta day, we say, look, we need to see some mantas. We didn't see any yesterday. Let's go see some mantas, and we'll go find them for you. But it's just
I think you're so many mantas there. I mean, I can remember, 3 or 4 dives, one after another, in different areas, just seeing mantas and mantas. I mean, they're just amazing. And if you really want to see manta rays, as you said, these are reef manta rays, not the largest, but I guess it's possible to get the odd oceanic manta, but these are big anyway. And if you want to be certain of seeing manta rays, this is where you go. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Brad.
for sure.
You know,
No doubt.
nurse
And
sharks, tawny nurse sharks, gray reef
yeah,
sharks. I mean, you don't know which to point your camera at first. It's just amazing.
yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I can't show everything in this presentation, otherwise it'd go for hours. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of things I'm going to skip over, like Murph said, the sharks and things. We do an evening dive at Manta Island, where the divers go down. The snorkelers also going as well. And there's just, there's 30 to 40 tawny nurse sharks swimming around. There's stingrays. There's reef sharks. It's just a beautiful thing to do. And we go in just as the light's dwindling. We spend about 40 minutes in the water, and we come up just as the light's leaving. And it's just spectacular watching that sunset over the water as we're doing this snorkel dive. It's great.
Yeah.
And
I sent in, Robin, I see you there. Nice to see you. I sent in a couple of videos that I put together, from the diving. Brad and I, we integrate our videos, together, because it's just not enough time to each do their own thing. But I put a couple together, and we can just put them on the website so they can see. They run about 6, I think 1 6 minutes, 1 8 minutes, and you can
7
see.
hours.
Yeah, yeah. But you can just see what it is. And we haven't, the time, I just don't know where the time goes, it flies. But we haven't even covered the islands, Brad.
Well, we're about to, we're almost there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're almost there. I just got to.
Oh, are we?
So
okay. Boy,
the big one is whale sharks. So there's 2 places in the world where I've had my best whale shark interactions: the Maldives and Ningaloo Reef off the west coast of Australia. They're both amazing places to see it. Maldives, you pretty much know where we're going. South Ari Atoll is the area we scan. We also do a couple of nights where we'll go into a lagoon they're known to encounter. We'll put the lights on the back of the ship. It will attract plankton, and then we hope and we had whale sharks come up to the back of the ship at night last time we were there. But again, these are massive filter feeders. So these have a slightly different way than the manta rays. They suck in water. They still have these these filtering plates near their gill slits. The water runs parallel down their mouth. They capture all the plankton out. The water then runs out the sides of their gill slits, and then the food gets brought down. These guys sometimes get clogged up filtration pads. So every now and again, you'll actually see a whale shark doing a big cough, and they're coughing up that all the excess that's been stuck in their plates. But they're a gentle giant of the ocean. These guys can get to over 30 feet in length. We generally don't see the fully grown ones there, but even if they're 15 to 20 feet long, that's a big shark to be swimming with, and totally harmless. So I'll just show you a bit of footage. You can get up, within the right distance of it. That guy's not doing the right thing, but oh, what happened there? Why did that stop? Let's start that again. All right, so look at that huge dorsal fin, big pectorals, just slowly, that massive, powerful tail, just powering it through the water, allowing for it to just, look, you can see the bottom there. It's not deep water. We're just cruising around with these whale sharks. We just take our time. Murph takes his divers diving with them. You'll come snorkeling with me. We'll snorkel with them. So it's just a fantastic experience. And at first, everybody can snorkel with them if they like. And then the divers can go off and do their own thing and have a dive. And whoever wants to continue doing run after run, we get dropped off in front of the whale shark, and we just let it swim past us. We get our great view, take our photos, and it really is a life-changing experience to swim with a whale shark, don't you reckon, Murph?
No, absolutely. And we had a phenomenal dive with one that same day. The same day you took this film, Brad.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were lucky enough to get in and dive with them, because usually it's difficult to dive with, big fish, whales, sharks, anything. It's difficult to get in at the right moment because they move so fast. Sometimes they're moving slow, but very often what looks to be slow is actually quite fast when you're in the water with them. And then to jump in with scuba diving equipment and catch them in the water at the same time is very difficult. But it happens, and we were lucky this last time. We had an amazing dive with a whale shark. Phenomenal.
It's awesome. Amazing. Yeah. So, moving right along to,
Yay!
yay!
Out of the
We don't always
nitty-gritty.
have,
Yeah! This is what it's all about. Forget the
This is a-
diving and snorkeling.
this
It's
is,
all
yeah, this is what
about
we actually do.
party boogies.
So, yeah, we don't just get in the water, get out of the water, get in the water, get out of the water. We have a chat. We go for a morning snorkel. You want to go hang out on a sand cave for a bit. There's over 1,200 islands in the Maldives, okay? About 230 or so are inhabited. So we have a lot of choice of places to go where there might be a few other people, but they're not inhabited. So we can just have our own little stretch of beach. You can go for a walk. Some of these are small enough you can circumnavigate the island, come back. It's stunning. So we'll sit in the shallows. We'll take a break. We'll go back. We'll have some lunch. Sometimes we have a good morning snorkel. Jump off on the quay. Have a bit of time there. They can prepare lunch. We go back, have lunch. Afternoon dive. Afternoon snorkel. Whatever we want to do. Like we said before, we'll all just decide if we've been doing a lot of diving and snorkeling and you just want a beach day, we can do a beach day. Everything is very, very simple to organize here. One of our favorite things also is we've had a great day out. What's a sand cave close by now? Let's go there. Let's take a cooler to shore. Let's have a few glasses of wine or beers or whatever is your taste on shore and toast the sunset. It's just a beautiful place to be. You're pretty good at this, aren't you, Murph?
Yeah, oh yeah. I'm the leader in that gang. But the barbecue, they always do barbecues, and we can do one or two of them, and they're amazing. And the sand sculptures they do on the beach.
Yeah.
We're walking, doing our little walk around and having a drink at the bar. In the meantime, these guys are not only preparing the most incredible barbecue food, but they're artists in sand sculpturing too. Whale sharks, all kinds of things, dolphins sculptured in the sand on the beach, all right where we're sitting for our barbecue. It's amazing. They really do a great job.
Oh, they do. But the other thing we do, just to let you know, is it's nice to go ashore once in a while to a place that does have people on it. And last time we were there, we just said to the captain of the boat, listen, where's an island with a school on it? We'd love to go have a school visit, maybe make a donation and just hang out with the kids and see what's happening. And so we went to this school. We just turned up unannounced. I just walked in, or Murph and I just walked in and said, hey, do you mind if we spend a little bit of time? And they were over the moon to see us. They couldn't have been more welcoming. We went in, we sat with the kids, look, the cute little kids as they were on their break, having a chat. We had this wonderful little photo op at the end there where everybody, with the kids, they were just so happy to have us there to visit the school. So, it's the Maldives. A lot of people go, they sit on a beach, they do a bit of a snorkel, they go to a fancy restaurant in the evening. It's so diverse the way we do it. We're on the boat. We've got the luxury of the boat. We've got a nice place to eat. The food's amazing. The beds are great. But during the day, we can access all the things that we want. And a lot of the people that visit the Maldives don't visit these islands that have schools and just are normally functioning. They're not resort islands. We go to the non-resort islands as well to visit the locals and just hang out and see what they're all doing. And, like I said, this school had no idea we were coming, and they were just so excited for us to come and visit that they couldn't have done enough for us. And then, you walk down the streets and see the kids. People will stop and talk to you. Just a fantastic little way to spend a couple of hours. Again, we don't need to be in the water all the time. There's other things to experience while we're over there. You hang out with these kids around here in the shops and stuff, and they're just so happy that visitors are actually coming to see them on their island. So it's really good. Beautiful. It's such a photogenic place, the Maldives. So much stuff to see there. And we were on this island and basically came across these boat builders. Wasn't it great, Murph? We came across these boat builders and they were happy for us to come in and watch. They even let a few of us climb up that big sort of man-made ladder up to the top there. And it was great. They couldn't have been more welcoming. It was just a fantastic day to be on the island with them. But of course, then we go off and explore. We head out, we move along, we find new things to see, new beautiful beaches. There's so many different islands that we can go and visit on all the different atolls. Again, just chilling out in the water after a nice day out and about. But in between areas as well, out on decks, it's such a beautiful place. The wind isn't generally very strong in the Maldives, so the waters are generally calm. So you can be out on decks between destinations and always looking out for wonderful things like these spinner dolphins. So spinner dolphins, they live in warm water, they're happy, they're always happy to ride the bow wave of a boat there in front of the Doti there. Now this is just a little bit of footage. We see dolphins all the time when we're in the Maldives. If you want to see them, it's such a good place to see them. Many times you'll be driving along and you'll just, make a slight deviation to attract them, and they'll come and they'll just spend a lot of time just hanging out on the bow of the boat, like you can see here. Absolutely a beautiful thing to see. And as Murph was alluding to before, we have, we'll bring you ashore to an island called Mbara Island, or the Barbecue Island, and there's one of those sand sculptures Murph was talking about. The crew are just so talented. They'll make these wonderful sculptures. We'll all get to hang out. There's Maddie checking out the sand sculpture. Murph's up making sure the barbecue's going all right there. And then, you get these beautiful sunsets. And on sunset, you'll then have just a wonderful feed on shore there. And here's some of the crew getting that barbecue ready for you on the island. There's everybody getting through it very, very easily. The food is amazing in the Maldives, right, Murph? The food's incredible.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah,
we had the best cook, the Maldivian cook we had on the Emperor ship, last year we were on. She was just amazing, the food she was putting out. It was actually too good. I think we all came off about 3 kilos heavier than when we went on, despite the fact we were dying times a day. But anyway. The food is really good. Fantastic. And there's such a lovely crew, all of them, super.
No, they're just fantastic people. And if you want to go shopping, there's plenty of spots to go shopping. There's Gino and Scott heading into a shop to go and buy up big. So there's plenty of things. There's lots of wonderful little things to see in the Maldives. One of the coolest things to see is the Bodu Beru on one of the islands that we go to. We see the Bodu Beru drumming. And it's a traditional drumming that the locals do for us. We can either see it on the shore, like we have in this case, or we can actually get them to come to the boat, depending on how we feel, and they'll do the presentation on the boat. But, we can get up and dance with them and have a great time. Beautiful. So there's a lot of cultural aspect to the trip as well. And, we enjoy it. My bag is to be in the water, checking out the reefs and doing all those sorts of things. But I also love all of this extra that we do, to be able to see the locals, check out their culture, go and just visit them and talk and visit those wonderful Sankey Islands, beautiful sunsets, lots of cool things to see on the beach. But again, one of the major highlights of the trip, and just to finish up with, is the fact that we'll always find you somewhere where it's just us. And this is Vataru Atoll. This is one of the coolest spots that we go to, and we'll definitely go here, I think, because it's one of my favorites. It's a beautiful little atoll. It's very small compared to the other ones. And just to let you know, out here is the edge where, if you remember those 3 manta rays that were in formation coming down, that's the edge that we dive to see those guys. And just in here is where we go snorkeling. So there's snorkeling in between that area there. It's a fantastic place. We always try and get you to a place where you can meet locals, you can have some fun, you can get in the water, all those sorts of things. But we also make sure that we have the place to ourselves on many occasions, because it's such a great place to access. As I said, so many islands. And with that, thank you for listening. That's Vanahura Valley Sand Cave. We'll try and get you, I'm pretty sure, I love this place, so I'll be putting my hand up to go and visit there. So thanks very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed that.